Hello, and welcome to Inventors Helping Inventors. I'm your host, Alan Beckley, inventor of the Wonder Wallet. If you're an inventor searching for proven ways to make money with your invention, if you dream to see your product selling in stores everywhere, you've come to the right place. There's no better place to get help than from experts, inventors who've already achieved success. Every week, I interview successful inventors, asking them the questions you want to know. Tune in to learn from the experts so you can get your invention out of the tank and into the bank. Welcome to episode number 633. Today, it's Thursday, and that means it's time for another Thursday thought. So what is your Thursday thought for today? It's this. What makes this podcast different? I thought it would be fun to take a little break here and talk about, I guess you could call it my design philosophy behind 7 years of doing this podcast and why I set up to do something different than I saw at least with other inventors podcasts out there. So I thought it would be fun to share that with you. And before I dive right into it, I also want to share my deep thanks for you guys and gals being here and listening in week after week and supporting the podcast. And I do appreciate all of your comments and ratings and reviews on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcast. That helps the podcast a lot. So with that, let's get into what makes this podcast different compared to other inventors podcasts. And you know I like to do things in threes. I'm going to break my usual rules. I'm going to give you 4 things that makes this podcast different from others. So the number one thing is that I designed the podcast where it follows the journey of a guest, of an inventor in each episode. You know, what led them to create their invention? What was their aha moment? What were some challenges that they had along the way that they had to overcome? And all of that put together, what were their learnings? What did they learn from that they could share to the benefit of our listeners? The goal is for it to create the sense of sitting with us in a coffee shop, a Starbucks, as we're chatting back and forth. So you feel like you're right there. That was my goal in creating the podcast like that, because I feel it's a good listener experience. And I think these items hopefully engage you as listeners and help to inspire, encourage you as you see that some of your challenges, some of your frustrations, and some of your ahas match up with the hundreds of inventors I've had on the podcast. So that's item number 1. The podcast follows the journey of an inventor. Item number 2, something I felt very strongly about, especially when I first designed this. I've curated into a specific, predictable format. Why this matters is when I'm listening to a podcast of any ilk, and I listen to a lot, I don't like it if the experience from week to week bounces all over the place. You know, if the format one week is kind of one way and the next week it's something different, I want a predictable experience. I want it to be curated, again, just as I described the journey of the inventor. And so the way I chose to do that, as I described, is a storyboard sort of a format. Again, the inventor's story, their challenges, their learned experiences. And that way, you know, you will get elements of that in every single podcast episode where I have a guest on. Well, number 3, and this is a short one, and I think it's important, is this podcast is hosted by someone who himself is an inventor, who's been there and done that, gotten the t-shirt. Because there are podcasts out there for inventors, but in many cases, the host is not him or herself an inventor. And I feel it has a more genuine experience for listeners if the person hosting the podcast knows about inventing and is able to shape questions that are more meaningful. And finally, the fourth one is longevity and frequency. Look, I've been doing this for over 7 years now. Started in January of 2019. I can hardly believe that myself. We have over 600 episodes now. And the frequency for the last 5 years, I believe, we've been doing 2 episodes a week. Every Monday is me interviewing a inventor. Every Thursday, like this, is a Thursday Thought. Me sharing with you a thought that I feel like would be of some value to you, and it's just a sort of like me on the mic episode. So, once again, longevity and frequency, here's what I can tell you about podcasts writ large, definitely true of Inventors Podcast. People get very excited about starting a podcast, and that lasts them for about the first 10 episodes. And then they think, this feels like real work, and there's no money coming in from this. And very frequently, after about 10 episodes, the podcast comes to an end. So even though there's something like 3 million podcasts out there, something like only, I'm making these figures up, something like only maybe 20% of those have more than 50 episodes. So longevity means something, frequency means something, and as I just described, I believe predictability is value. So again, just a real quick recap of the 4 elements of what makes this podcast unique or different from others. Number 1, it follows the journey of an inventor in each episode. Number 2, it is curated into a specific, predictable format. Number 3, it's hosted by someone who is an inventor. And number 4, the longevity that has been going on and the frequency, I'm not planning on quitting anytime soon. So I appreciate you guys being in there and being part of this podcast. And thanks as always for listening, and we'll be talking to you again soon. Thanks so much for tuning in to Inventors Helping Inventors. If you like the show, please tell your friends about it. Make sure to subscribe in iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts so you won't miss a single episode. Talk to you soon.